we begin a series of reports that many of you have been asking for, a deeper look into the accusations of MaineCare fraud against Gateway Community Services.
Gateway is a for-profit healthcare provider founded and run by Somali American immigrants. It offers counseling, case management, behavioral health, home services, and more. MaineCare is the state's version of Medicaid, government-provided health insurance for lower-income people.
3 different audits by Maine's Department of Health and Human Services has found Gateway overbilled MaineCare by a total of more than $1.6 million from 2017 to 2022. In the last 5 years, the state's MaineCare program paid it $28 million. Republicans in Maine's legislature tell us they are frustrated with how long it has taken to find potential fraud. Our Chris Costa spoke with one of the state's top Republicans about this. Joins us now live. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Brian and Amanda. So I spoke with Senator Matt Harrington. He's the assistant Republican leader in the Senate. And so this week I'm going to be bringing you a series of question and answer exchanges that I had with him. He thinks that the state, one, is not taking the claims of fraud seriously. He also feels that the state is not properly staffed to do these investigations. And he also feels that the Attorney General's office should be moving more swiftly. Now, we know that the Department of Health and Human Services has sent this case to the AG, but the AG won't confirm if it's investigating. It's credible, that's why it's with the AG's office, and now needs to be, for lack of a better term, adjudicated, processed. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do agree with it, but I think, again, going all the way back, this has been a long time in the making. Mm-hmm. Going back, like I said, to the LePage administration that flagged this for the Mills administration that this company was overbilling. How long do you get? In no other sphere would you get to take money from the government, not pay it back, and just be granted absolute immunity. Just you don't have to pay it back. There's no timetable on when you have to pay it back. If you don't pay your taxes, how quickly does that become criminal? And what is the plan to recover that money if you keep continuing to allow that net amount to grow?
So we took those questions directly to the Department of Health and Human Services. Here's what they said. DHHS confirmed that Gateway has paid back the entire $125,000 in overpayment from the first audit. DHHS confirmed Gateway is appealing the other 2 audits. And Brian and Amanda, that audit process is long. We may not know the final decision and how much money Gateway owes for at least 3 more months. Now, DHHS did tell us it is normal for a provider owing a debt to continue to operate in MaineCare. In many cases, a provider will be on a repayment plan where they send a monthly payment to the department or have the department offset amounts against their MaineCare payments until the debt gets repaid. We also heard from Gateway spokesperson who told us for years Gateway has worked closely and transparently with regulators to improve its processes, provide requested documentation, and address issues as they arose. It will continue to do so. So Brian and Amanda, a lot more questions to answer on this case specifically, this reporting, just the tip of the iceberg. On Tuesday, we're going to dive into the number of staff that DHHS has dedicated to finding fraud, waste, and abuse in the MaineCare program, and why Senator Harrington believes, his colleagues believe, that there could be a link to the criminal cases of Medicaid fraud in Minnesota.
A lot more to come on this.
Yes, a lot.
Chris, thank you.
Yep.
We continue our series of reports into multiple accusations of MaineCare fraud, questions you have told us you want answered.
Republicans in the Maine legislature believe the Department of Health and Human Services and Attorney General's office are not taking these accusations seriously. Chris Costa has been pressing our state leaders for answers. Joins us now live with what he's learning about this. Hi, Chris.
Well, Brian and Amanda, we talked about how Republicans had brought up a number of concerns back in December about all these accusations of fraud. One of those concerns centered on how many companies actually bill MaineCare and the number of staff that DHHS has to ferret out any fraud. Well, about 2 weeks after that, during a presentation to the legislature's Health and Human Services Committee, some of DHHS's top supervisors explained they have 52 employees across 3 units to actually catch fraud, waste, and abuse of MaineCare. But we also learned those staff have a lot of ground to cover because there are more than 5,000 providers that currently bill MaineCare, the state's version of Medicaid. It's government-provided health insurance for low-income people. Senate Republican Assistant Minority Leader Matt Harrington believes DHHS is not catching enough waste, fraud, or abuse of taxpayer dollars. Where is DHHS's accountability in this, in your mind?
I think they've dropped the ball substantially. in my opinion. I think a lot of this is going to come from the federal investigation into how Maine is conducting itself with regarding Medicaid billing. I'm glad to see it's getting federal attention, because prior to that, we weren't seeing really any movement on this issue. So I'm happy to see the federal government, Representative Comer, stepping in and looking into this. And there's a lot of interest.
Republican Congressman James Comer chairs the U.S. House of Representatives Oversight Committee. He's asked Governor Janet Mills and DHHS Commissioner Sarah Gagne-Holmes for MaineCare documents, probing whether benefits went to immigrants who came to the U.S. illegally. In the Gateway case, Maine DHHS says it has found credible allegations of fraud and has referred the matter to the Attorney General's office. The AG's office will not tell us if it's investigating. Senator Harrington called out the AG, saying he feels Aaron Fry is dragging his feet on the case.
Yes.
Why?
We've just seen no action on this. The federal government, federal agents, looking into these things, and you're just not seeing that same level of scrutiny from the state. And frankly, I think as the Attorney General, he has an obligation to address this and tell the Maine people what he's doing about it. And he's not. He's elected by the legislature, but he represents all Maine people. And I think he has an obligation to make a statement. I think the governor has an obligation to make a statement and tell the Maine people and reassure them that they are taking these allegations seriously and that they are doing everything in their power to root out fraud. That would be a start. Put some sort of confidence in us that they're taking this seriously. And right now, I do not feel that they are taking this seriously. They are only now taking Gateway seriously because enough information has come out and has been made public that they have to.
So again, as we've been reporting, the Attorney General's office has told us it cannot even confirm the existence of an investigation. But Governor Janet Mills did tell us in a written statement, quote, "My administration launched a comprehensive audit of Gateway Community Services in January 2023, which found overpayments of more than $1 million in 2021 and 2022. Further, DHHS took action to suspend MaineCare payments to Gateway due to a credible allegation of fraud and referred the matter to the Attorney General's office. I take seriously allegations of fraud and misuse of taxpayer funds, and I support a full investigation to hold those who commit fraud accountable." Brian and Amanda, in our next report, we're going to dive into some of the similarities and the differences between these accusations of MaineCare fraud, credible allegations, compared to the criminal charges in the Minnesota Medicaid fraud cases.
All right, Chris Costa breaking it down. Thanks for joining us.
We are continuing our look into the fraud allegations against a company in Maine being investigated for overbilling MaineCare.
There are hundreds of thousands of dollars on the line here. Republicans have voiced many concerns over the state of that investigation. News on Maine's Chris Costa has been digging into this case for us and joins us with another update on what he's finding.
Hey there, Brian and Amanda. In our first two reports, you heard concerns from Senator Matt Harrington, who's the assistant minority leader of the Republicans in the Maine Senate. At a press conference back in December, he was one of several GOP lawmakers who compared the Medicaid fraud investigation in Minnesota to the fraud accusations here in Maine. Now, one key difference. Minnesota's case involves criminal charges. In Maine, DHHS has sent what it called credible allegations of fraud to the Attorney General's office, but the AG will not tell us if his office is in fact investigating. So as part of my conversation with Senator Harrington, I asked him why he feels those cases are linked.
I have a career in law enforcement, so how many different nexus do you need? There's a lot of similarities. Yes, they're Somali companies in both states, but I think of organized crime, and is this a nationwide scheme that's going on? I think it's a fair question. It has nothing to do with the fact that they're Somali. They are Somali, but that has nothing to do with the fact that they're Somali.
We all knew this fraud was real and happening.
In December, Harrington was one of a handful of Republican lawmakers voicing their frustrations over how the state handles accusations of MaineCare fraud.
Here, where there's smoke, where there's fire, where there is a correlation here between what's happening, I think is just the tip of the iceberg.
They called out House Representative Decca Delac, the first Somali-American lawmaker in Maine.
Representative Decca Delac, who previously worked in a leadership role at Gateway, now sits on the Appropriations Committee, the very committee responsible for overseeing how our tax dollars are spent. These are not coincidences, they are conflicts that demand scrutiny.
Delac was also the Assistant Executive Director of Gateway Community Services Maine, the nonprofit that shares an address and a founder with Gateway Community Services, which is accused of MaineCare fraud. DeLocke told us she had no involvement in the MaineCare billing practices. Any accusations that I participated in illegal activities aren't just unequivocally false. They're also reckless and harmful. I take seriously the state's responsibility to serve as a good steward of taxpayer dollars, and I support the investigation to hold accountable any individuals who misuse public funds, she told CENTER Maine in a written statement. A few weeks later, DeLocke announced that she would not run for re-election, saying, quote, "The climate for black and brown public servants has become increasingly hostile and unsafe. Throughout my tenure, I've experienced persistent racism, harassment, and threats." I asked Senator Harrington about the appearance of racism by focusing only on cases of fraud involving the Somali community. Critics will say that Republicans are painting Somalis with a broad brush. Some would go so far as to say that's being racist. What's your response to that?
I think that's absurd. I don't care where they're from or what their ethnicity is. I'm an Irish guy. If they were an Irish family or a French family or a company rather, I would be taking this just as seriously. It has nothing to do with their race at all.
So where does the Gateway case stand? Maine DHHS confirmed that Gateway has paid back the entire $125,000 in overpayment from audit number 1. Gateway is appealing the other 2 audits, which found more than $1 million in MaineCare overbilling. And we know that audit process is long. We may not know the final decision and how much money Gateway owes for at least 3 more months. A spokesperson for Gateway told us, quote, "For years, Gateway has worked closely and transparently with regulators to improve its processes, provide requested documentation, and address issues as they arose. It will continue to do so," end quote. If you missed any of our previous coverage, the nuts and bolts of how DHHS finds fraud and the tools it has to do so, as well as those questions from Republicans about how that process works, you can go to this story on our website, Brian and Amanda, newcentermaine.com, where we're going to have all 3 of the stories that we've done this week.
All right, and reporting continues. Thank you, Chris.